Kia ora, this is Liz. Welcome to Dames Ablaze. If you are new to the channel, can I suggest you go look at the intro video so you know what this is all about. If you are not new to the channel, you know what's going on and what this is all about. But if you haven't subscribed yet, can you do so? And click the bell icon. That just means you'll get a notification when a new video drops. And give me a like at the end of the video if you've enjoyed it. So today we're looking at John chapter 6, verses 30 to 34. I'll read them to you now. Therefore they said to him, What sign will you perform then, that we may see it and believe you? What work will you do? Our fathers ate the manna in the desert, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Jesus said to them, Most assuredly I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. Signs, signs, always looking for signs. You know, I can start to see, no pun intended there, why Jesus got a bit sick and tired of this continual need for a sign, especially when he'd just done something completely out of the box, like, I don't know, turning 5 loaves of bread and a few scanty fish into a meal for thousands. But they want to see. They asked him what they should do, and now they want some evidence upon which they can do what he told them to do, I believe. They need to know what they're believing in, some evidence, some proof that he is who he appeared to be. Does this sound like faith to you? I thought faith was something you had without seeing. Well, it is and it isn't. We don't actually have a blind faith, as many have taught, including myself for many years. There is actual evidence outside of the Bible for our beliefs. Jesus is an actual historical figure. No real historian would doubt that. He's attested to in documents outside of the Bible, so he definitely existed, and historians are also agreed that he died by Roman crucifixion. These things are actually not under debate in the historians' planet. The fate of many, many believers who were eyewitnesses to his death and resurrection, who died because they would not recant, is a huge sign, if you like, that everything we're told about his death and resurrection are true. And these are just a couple of the evidences that we have for our faith. If you need more, I suggest you look up Cold Case Christianity. You'll find all sorts of proof there. But God does not actually require us to have faith without something to back it up. Evidences for the Bible are found all the time. It's just that the mainstream media don't necessarily cover them. You need to keep an eye on archaeological websites for that kind of information. The last piece to be uncovered was a curse tablet found on Mount Ebal. This was one of the 2 mountains described in both Deuteronomy and Joshua. So, I don't know if you'll remember, the tribes were split in 2. One went up Mount Ebal, the others went up Mount Gerizim. That's the mountain that the Samaritan woman spoke about. So the guys on Gerizim shouted blessings. The guys on Ebal shouted curses. Is this story ringing any bells for you? Well, they found a tablet of stone on Ebal. Actually, I don't think it's stone. Don't quote me on that one. And it says, you are cursed by the God Yahweh, cursed. You will die cursed. Cursed, you will surely die. Cursed, you are by Yahweh, cursed. The writing is an extremely ancient form of Hebrew, but the presence of the name Yahweh with the vowels removed makes it obvious that this is related to the whole blessing versus cursing from the Bible. It's pretty exciting stuff in the archaeological world, I have to tell you. Shame the rest of the world isn't interested. Perhaps then these folk weren't too far off base to ask for some evidence, although you could kind of argue, I believe rightly, they just had some pretty conclusive evidence presented to them. I don't know how much more evidence you need than all that food turning up out of nowhere. Also, the word faith doesn't really mean to them what it means to us. To us, it means believing in something. To them, it meant trusting and believing in something. They want a sign that he is trustworthy, which seems kind of ironic given all the healings, feedings, and exorcisms that he's been performing. What did they come to find Jesus for? Well, what did he say they'd come for? More bread, right? And the very next words out of their mouths kind of confirm his suspicions. Our fathers ate manna in the desert, as it is written. Then they go on to quote out of Psalm 78. So he gave them bread from heaven to eat, a foretaste of being a Moses type, you'd think. But it doesn't seem to have been enough for them to trust him. At the same time, they want him to prove it by giving them more bread, just like Moses did. Let's head back to Psalm 78 and take a look at this portion that they are quoting from, right? So we can get our context right. So Psalm 78, and I'm going to read from 17 to 32, which is a bit of a chunk, but you'll survive. But they sinned even more against him by rebelling against the Most High in the wilderness. And they tested God in their heart by asking for the food of their fancy. Yes, they spoke against God. They said, "Can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Behold, he struck the rock so that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide meat for his people?" Therefore the Lord heard this and was furious. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel, because they did not believe in God and did not trust in his salvation. Yet he had commanded the clouds above and opened the doors of heaven, had rained down manna on them to eat, and given them of the bread of heaven. Men ate angels' food. He sent them food to the full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He also rained meat on them like the dust, feathered fowl like the sand of the seas, and he let them fall in the midst of their camp, all around their habitation. So they ate and were well filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were not deprived of their craving, but while their food was still in their mouths, the wrath of God came against them, and slew the stoutest of them, and struck down the choice men of Israel. In spite of this, they still sinned, and did not believe in his wondrous works. Therefore their days he consumed in futility, and their years in fear. Interesting portion to pull a quote out of. They didn't pull the whole thing out now, did they? Is this psalm a true retelling of what went on during the years in the wilderness? Well, yes and no. I mean, it hits the highlights, but it's been given some serious poetic license. God didn't actually rain bread out of heaven. Can you imagine? You're out in the field and suddenly loaves of bread start falling out of the sky. Kind of painful, no? Or maybe it was flat bread and it just kind of floated down like a frisbee. Cool image. Not really what happened. Let's go back into the book of Exodus and see what actually happened, right? Exodus 16, 11 to 14 tells us this. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So it was that quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, What is it? And for those who don't know, that is actually manna. That's what it means. What is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. It didn't rain out of heaven, now did it? Not really. It appeared on the grass after the dew had lifted, and it wasn't bread as such. It was the means to make bread. It's all poetic imagery. So they're quoting the Psalms properly, but it's a psalm. And you have to ask yourself, what exactly were they expecting? I might wait for the street cleaner to move past because it's kind of loud out there, and I suspect you'll be hearing it on the tape. Did they actually expect more manna after all those centuries? They were expecting a greater prophet than Moses, right? So of course he should provide them with continual bread. But that kind of ignores the whole concept that the manna was only for the 40 years in the wilderness, and it stopped falling pretty much the minute they stepped foot into the promised land. Jesus was right, wasn't he? They did only come to get more bread. How disappointing, and how typical of us humans, missing the point again. Has he not already shown them enough proof? What more did they need? An angel appearance, maybe? Shame they weren't there at his birth. Goodness. Either they have short-term memory loss or they really didn't understand what the mass feeding meant. Perhaps they just didn't understand what was going on there, like the folks at the wedding. Maybe they just didn't get that it was a miracle. Jesus' miracles were often very understated. His part in it could potentially, I suppose, have gone under the radar. It's possible, I suppose. I find it highly unlikely. The amount of food required was enormous. They would have known there wasn't some pile of bread and pile of fish hanging around. So they had to know Jesus had something to do with it, surely. Of course they did, right? Or they wouldn't have followed him in the first place. They know there's something going on here outside of their normal humdrum average lives. Jesus counters all of this supposition with another, most assuredly, I say to you, he starts, if we heard him say this kind of thing nowadays, like the truly, truly, amen at the beginning of every sentence, I think most of us would be going, yeah, why do you keep saying that? Because to us, when someone has to keep going, I promise you, or you got to believe me, we always go, yeah, no, right? That's how modern people think. It's not how they thought. Truly, truly, he says, Moses did not give you bread from heaven. Now, this is literally true. Moses wasn't the one to bring the bread. In the miracles of Moses, he's usually standing and doing something with his staff. However, in the appearance of the manna, Moses and his staff don't appear. It turns up all on its little lonesome, arriving with the dew, while all the Israelites are asleep, including Moses. Moses did not give you the bread from heaven. Don't miss the in this sentence, because it's the most important part of it. Moses gave them manna, and though they thought of it falling from heaven, it did not, and it was not the bread of heaven. Who or what then is the bread from heaven, and what on earth does that even mean? Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. So the original Greek translation is actually a little more helpful. It goes like this: but the Father of me gives you the bread from the heaven, the real bread. So the word true or real is an adjective. It means genuine or real. It is true inside and out, true to its very bones. The true bread from heaven then, which Jesus will go on to explain, is not the manna that the Israelites lived on for 40 years. Neither is it the multiplied bread that they had the day before. It's something quite different, something not so corporeal. Verse 33 starts with the explanation for the bread of God. First clue, whatever the bread of heaven is, it comes straight from God. The Greek form of the word God here is Theos, and it was in use long before the New Testament was written, and it referred to the supreme being who owns and sustains all things. Just remember, in him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Just to remind you that that's where John started his gospel, with God and his creation, right? The bread of God, says Jesus, is he who comes down from heaven. So not a what then, but a who. This who comes down from heaven, from God, and gives life to the world. This can only refer to Jesus. He's the only one really who comes down in order to give life. Angels come down, but they don't give life. They give messages after giving a really big fright. The Satan came down, but it certainly wasn't to give life. He came only to kill, steal, and destroy. Jesus came to give life, to give it in abundance. He is the bread of heaven, and he comes to bring life. But why use the analogy of bread? Well, bread was one of the most fundamental staple foods of humanity for millennia. Every single culture makes some form of bread. Whether it's risen or flat doesn't even matter. From chapati to baguette, the world is full of bread forms. So why wouldn't he use the analogy of bread? It's the easiest idea for humans to get their heads around. Or it should have been. Apparently, we can't help ourselves arguing about this point. Does he mean it literally, or does he mean it figuratively? The debate rages. And seeing as I don't want to have this debate every week, I'm going to go on the record before we even head down the rabbit hole by saying I am fully on the figurative side of the argument. My main reason for that is the combined weight of the scriptures, old and new, that tell me God does not approve of human sacrifice or eating human flesh, nor does he approve of eating the flesh of animals with their blood. So I cannot go down any road that tells me he suddenly had a change of heart when Jesus turned up. I apologize if that upsets anyone, but that is the stand that I take as of 2025. Now, I may learn something later on that changes my mind, but that's where I sit today. This particular heavenly bread gives life. It sustains life, just as bread has sustained the lives of countless billions of people over the centuries and millennia of human existence. Bread is a fundamental staple, and you know what? So should Jesus be. He should be fundamental to the lives of humans. And the weird thing is, despite where humanity is heading, full tilt without stopping, we're still living on his words. The morality and rights that everyone seems to be screaming for these days have their basis in his teaching. Being kind, where did that come from? How does that evolve? It doesn't. It's unexplainable by evolutionary means. They say it themselves. Nature is red and tooth and claw. Well, if that's your worldview, how on earth does humanity come up with kindness as a virtue without God? Where does our moral stance on goodness even come from without God? Jesus' words still echo even after all these years. They are still the bedrock foundation for Western modern ideas of fairness and kindness and rights. Mankind is trying very hard to separate those ideas from their creator, but honestly, I don't see how you can without being extremely dishonest about how we even got them in the first place. The response of the crowd is the response of all humanity. Okay, give it to us then. Lord, they say, starting with all the honour and respect they can possibly muster. Now, Lord is an old-fashioned term meaning master or even sir. They aren't calling him Lord because they see him as God. It's just a term of respect. Lord, give us this bread always. The word always is not the same as the word eternal. There is no eternity in view here. It merely means at all times. They're not on Jesus' wavelength at all, really. They're sitting on earth. They want their earthly needs met at all times. Greedy bunch, aren't they? Would we be any different, though, do you think? Modern folks are pretty greedy. Always looking for more, or the next, or the best. We haven't really changed much, have we? If anything, we've kind of gone backwards. The more technology we have, the more we want. The more freedom to do whatever we want, the more freedoms we want. We're like children who get that first little taste of sugar and we want more. It's not surprising that they asked to have the bread always. Actually, if they understood him right, they could have had it always, seeing as it's not bread at all, but rather the eternal life he offers and the wisdom of the ages contained in his teachings. Jesus is the bread of life. He is the stable component that sustains our lives as Christians. His life, his words, his death, his resurrection, they have sustained the Christian movement for over 2,000 years. No other prophet or religious leader comes close to this. I know the Muslims think they do, but Muhammad only turned up in the 1600s. That's 600 years after Christ. They will never be able to claim to have lasted longer than him. He will return, and they will still be behind by 600 years. Take heart then in these dark days. As the darkness closes in around us, we can all shine all the brighter, knowing that we are sustained by the bread of heaven, who came to give life. And that is all I have for you this week. I pray that you'll go out this week and you will partake of the bread of life. So that means you will go to church, you will maybe sing some worship songs, you will read your Bible, you will partake in God's heavenly bread. So, I look forward to seeing you again next week. I hope you have a great week. God bless. Ka kite anō.